Before we get into your good work as a coach, the empty nest coach, I want to know this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing all of our lives. How did you get through that time period? And how has it affected the way that you do things today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. I think for me, part of it was I worked in schools back then. I was a chief information officer in schools, and I was running basically the hybrid program to keep the school going for teaching and learning. I was essential personnel. So I got to go to work every day. It was just me.
Yeah.
So that rhythm was a little bit different. But I think what got me through it was I started a podcast. Not the one I have now, but it was called Positivity on Fire. I launched it December 31st of 2020 because what else do you do on New Year's Eve in a pandemic but
Yeah.
start a podcast, right? And for me, that was the piece I was like, you know what? I'm just going to look for positivity. Like if I can get my mind right about it, all this stuff is going on, then I can find a way forward. And then I did. I just became intentionally curious about my life after that. So that's how I did it. Is really like trying to spread stuff for other people, which helped me.
I have a jazz radio show, and I remember during that time, I was like, what am I going to do? Because I had kids at home. They were in the middle school. I have a son, I believe was 13 at the time, and Jilly was 14, my stepdaughter. And it was like I just did more interviews, like that podcasting realm. Like jazz musicians tend to be already powerful, positive voices. So to have all of that filtering through and making them feel like their lives are still moving, it was such a good. There's things that you could parlay and figure out during that time that would be mutually beneficial and mentally culpable that would help everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, working in the IT space, like keeping a school running during that time for the families, initially in the spring, it was just all hybrid and then all remote. And then it was hybrid in the fall. That in and of itself, like giving kids an opportunity to pick and choose was huge too. Like seeing a difference, making a difference during a bad time as well.
Yeah. Well, by day, I'm an IT technician for a school district. So I remember those times of coming in, and it was literally in those first weeks because it was during a spring break. And of course,
Mhm.
everybody thought, oh, we'll be off for 2 or 3 weeks.
Exactly.
No big deal, right? We'll be back. But then it was like we had to clean all the cables, we had to clean all the equipment, we had to get all of that. And for most districts, unless for some reason someone had like a Houdini that could tell the future, you had to scramble to get equipment and figure out what you were going to do with releases and sending devices home and damage and all of that.
All of that. Well, meet Houdini because we had Chromebooks already. We already had them many years in advance of that, and all we had to do was kind of teach the teachers how to teach at home. That was it. Like we didn't have to
Okay.
be able to find devices, so we were pretty blessed in that. But that was why I was on campus every day shipping stuff to people.
Yep.
Device breaks, device comes in, get it out. I got to know the UPS people really well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's talk about this incarnation of your career as a coach. If I put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds right now, it's career day, and one of the kids was like, hey, what do you do for a living? What's your answer?
Yeah, I help people figure out what's next. You're in middle school, you're getting ready to go to high school, you're probably nervous and you're worried. Same thing happens for adults. Exact
Yeah.
same thing. Every single transition we have in life creates questions. And usually the question is either now what or what now. And so I want people to get excited about going from what now or now what into ooh, what's next.
Yeah.
Like that's the energy I'm trying to create in the world for people.
So before we get to this point where you made this career transition, I want to know this. When you were 12 and you were in that seat at career day, what was your dream gig? What did you want to be?
Oh, MLB player, Joe.
Okay.
Easy. I mean, that was and then I couldn't hit a curveball in high school, and that dream kind of died pretty quickly.
They have those new cameras now where I believe the umpire's wearing it and you get to see that ball come in. And it's like,
It
wow,
comes
like
in the clip for sure. For
just
sure.
wild. I would love to get an accurate camera of a knuckleball because when I was growing up, it was Joe Necro and Charlie Huff. And,
Oh,
the ball
thank
would come in at 50 or 60 miles an hour, but you couldn't hit the damn thing because
like
it
a
was like a
fish swimming in
feather.
water. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was wild. So take me back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised? What were these foundational elements of technology, coaching, everything that's been harvested into who you are today?
Joe, military brat, grew up all over. My dad was in the Coast Guard, mostly on the East Coast, but we moved all the time. And I think for me, like I always was really good at trying to figure out like a better way to move forward. And when you move a lot, you have to, right? You got to be able to meet people quickly. You have to kind of get in the groove, find your people, learn something new. And that for me was like, ooh, if I look back at my life, all I did was have big life transitions like every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, ultimately what guided me and got me into the spot that I'm doing now. Not that I thought about it at the time when I became a coach, but
Yeah.
when I look back at all the jobs I ever had, like the first job I had was helping people with college admissions and then high school admissions. So what was I doing? I was helping people make a decision and find a better way forward. Technology, same thing. Make a decision, find a better way forward, solve a problem.
Yeah.
Solve a problem. And then now, same thing with coaching. I help people solve a problem and find a better way to move forward. That's it. That's what I've
Yeah.
done my entire life, even at 12.
Wow. So let me ask you this. Of all of that jumping around, what was your favorite city, favorite community you were a part of?
That's a really good question. So I think my favorite was we lived in New York City. There was a military base right off the tip of Manhattan called Governor's Island. It's not a military base anymore. It's like a national park, but we lived there. So I took a boat to school. Like I took the ferry to school every day, but it was like living in a small town right in the middle of New York City.
Wow.
So I went to high school in New York City. I love that experience. It was phenomenal. I have a lot of great friends and memories from that time. It was like small town connected to Manhattan. And that for me was like the best place to live at that age, eighth grade through high school.
Yeah. That would be amazing to be kind of separated by water and watching the biggest, most bustling place on the planet as a kid.
Oh,
You,
absolutely.
you know, because
Absolutely.
think about even like Steven Spielberg, all the movies that he would present, like being in Kansas City, Southern California, and that whole lifestyle was just alien to me. That he would always have that whole like cascading camera come out. You'd see the mountains and all this beautiful, lush thing going on, kind of with New York, like Tootsie and those scenes
Oh,
of
absolutely. Right. And a pan in on the World Trade Center, obviously, right?
yeah.
That was a huge landmark for people in those days. And in the house that we lived in on the island, on the military base, like I was on the third floor and my window looked straight every single night when I went to bed. Those towers were right there,
Yeah.
like lit. So for me, that was like childhood.
Yeah. I remember going up there in 95, I believe, 95, 96, and I visited family. My dad was born in Brooklyn, raised in Long Island. So I had a cousin, she was a real hipster, and she took me into the city and we did one of those London double-decker things. And I remember going by and seeing the towers. So when they fell, I was actually in Venice, Italy at the time. My dad was on the phone, kind of trying to coach me through what was going on. And I was like, I just saw those. Those are massive. How did this happen? You just can't even imagine structures like that could fall.
Oh, for sure. I was working at a school just right outside of New York and Connecticut, and then having to do the dismissal because all the kids, the parents started coming to school, and the kids wondering, because their parents, they're maybe a brother, uncle, whoever,
Yep.
dad was working in the city and trying to get communication and getting people out and shuffled, and it was a harrowing day for sure.
Yeah. So who's been that heroic force for you, that inspiration for you to become who you are in life?
I think my parents,
Yeah.
just watching them as a couple, they're still kicking at 87 and 85 here, soon to be 88 and 86. And they're, I think, what is it, 61 years this year? This end of this week, 4 days, 61 years they'll be
Wow.
together. But just watching how they partnered in life and, my dad being in the military and my mom being kind of like the caring person and just taking a little bit of piece of both of them to kind of form who I am in my life, I think is probably how I got to be where I am. And then you pick, probably other hundreds of people that I've met along the journey with all the different moves and the different folks in terms of like teachers and other mentors who kind of, it's a soup, right?
Yeah.
We're as humans, we're a soup. So a
Yeah.
little bit of ingredient from everybody.
For sure. So, as a technology guy, I got to know this. If you could tag along for a day with a tech giant, with a big IT brain person, whether it's Jobs or it's Gates, someone alive, someone that's not, if you could hang out with one of those tycoons and see how they roll in their heyday, who would you love to have watched?
You know who I think I would have loved to have watched Tinker was Ben Franklin.
Yeah.
Just, just like constantly innovating and thinking of different ways to do things.
Yep.
That to me is just fascinating. I don't, there's tech tycoons and the money and all of that, but for me, it's more like, how do you think differently?
That is a great answer because I think about like Thomas Jefferson and some of those early people that had their hands in all kinds of
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or Edison or whoever, right? That's
Yeah.
just the inventors, people who are just so curious. For me, that's life, is just being intentionally curious about everything.
Yeah.
It's, I think, how you continue to evolve as a person.
So when my job now as a technician, I've been here for 20 years and I remember at my interview there was a lot of people in the room. There was and so I get let into the room by the HR person who's like maybe 5 foot. And I'm like, oh, we'll just, it's just be a docile interview. I walk in and there's just a whole room, all the principals, all the administrators, everybody's in there. But I remember my IT director at that point, who's been one of the most influential people in my life, had two criteria for hiring somebody: a good attitude and a willingness to learn.
Oh, love those two,
That's it.
especially in tech. You can teach
Right.
people that.
That's it. And then from there, I mean, because every outfit has different technologies and things like that. But if you're able to kind of maneuver and get into it, you can figure it out. You know?
Absolutely. Even more so in schools, Joe, because
Yeah.
it's such people oriented, such human oriented work.
Yeah.
Like the people have to be
Yeah.
able to be a human first and a tech person second.
But I was a Gen Xer that came from that 90s era where I started my technology journey by being a desktop publishing guy for a home health consulting firm. And the higher ups were cheapskates. So they're like, hey, can you guys work on this? Because we don't want to hire anybody, but we want to get it done. And then we were all like, yeah, are you kidding? But it
Sure.
was fun. It was like we were getting in like knee deep into all of this stuff. And it was like during that Windows explosion. And it was just like, why not? But that's how you got your tech certification,
Oh,
tech.
street cred.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Ask me how many courses I've taken, Joe, and be like zero, maybe one.
right.
When, yeah.
I
Yeah.
know.
Nobel 311, I think, was a course I took, and that was it. The rest was all just right in the middle, thinking quickly, being curious, and trying to solve problems. So
That's it. That's it. Because now they have to have certifications, there's degrees, and everybody's totally gilled up with all the papers. But back in the day, we were just like, we were, yeah, it was like learning on the streets.
the thing that I think stuck for me about the certs most is we were doing in another school, we were doing a network change out of equipment. We were going to Cisco routers and stuff. And I had just been doing some learning on my own, messing around. And when we kind of finished that, the guy who was leading the project for the vendor was like, do you have your certification? I was like, no. He's like, well, you know a whole lot more than most people who do have a certification. It's because you just do it every day.
That's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you'll hear about these gurus that, like, I just watched a Netflix special on a guy, his name is Clarence Avant, and he was called the Black Godfather. And he would go into all of these high level rooms in Hollywood and in the music business, and he would negotiate on behalf of all of these primarily black entertainers to make sure that they got equanimity in the world. And he was just like, I don't think he finished like eighth grade, and he was just that guy that had that motor and a soul. He shone bright and he was a bulldog. He'd go in the room and get what he needed to get done. And that's really it. You just got to have the motor inside of you that says, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to figure it out, you know?
I love that. The motor inside. That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, just kickstarting. So let me ask you this. Of the different incarnations of career that you've had in your life, if you got into a dream tonight and ran into a 16-year-old, 18-year-old version of you, ready to charge out to the world, and you can give that version of you a piece of advice based on this wisdom you've accumulated, what advice would you impart?
Well, I think the advice I would impart, Joe, is actually my life motto that I've learned in the last couple of years is like every step has purpose.
Yeah,
You can't skip steps. Every step has purpose, but also like every experience has a purpose.
yeah,
Right. So it's not like, oh, I gotta go to college, I gotta figure out the perfect job, and then that's life. No. Like every single step you take, every course you take, every conversation you have, every place you go, every person you talk to, all of that adds up to be who ultimately you end up being. And so don't take that for granted. Is Don't try and rush it either. As we know that as we kind of get older, is like, oh, slow the ponies down a
that's
little
it.
bit.
That's it. I remember when I went to career day, they had said something along the lines of having 8 to 10 career changes. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to be a sports broadcaster. I'm going to have one career. What are you kidding?
Yeah, exactly. Baseball player to sportscaster. That was it. That
That's
was the
it.
goal.
Right. But now, I mean, I'm going on, I can't, I mean, I got two hands I can count on, and it just happens. You just
It
go
does.
through, you know,
Yeah, and
different
I think it has
levels.
a lot to do with not being afraid either,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yep.
Anything, being comfortable with uncomfortable things and just getting into the mix.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. If you were to walk into a room of everybody that knows you in a professional sense, whether it's as a coach or as an IT guy, any of those fields, and you could walk into that room with people and tell them one fun story. Maybe the first concert you went to, jumping out of an airplane, an adventure you went on, a great place you traveled to, a fun story to humanize yourself a little bit in that professional room. What would you tell that group?
I would I would tell them about hiking Kilimanjaro. That
Wow.
would be that would be it. And the journey that took place along that's kind of where I found my every step has purpose because I literally said it a million times to get me to the top. But the interesting thing about Kilimanjaro is it has four distinct climates. So you actually start off in a rainforest. And for me, heat and humidity, brutal. Everybody else is like 1,000 feet ahead. They were at camp like an hour and a half before me, and I'm like doing everything not to cramp up and basically blow it day one.
Yeah.
And so the thing that uh, the guides would say is in Swahili, it's pole pole. It means slowly, slowly. And I just crowned myself the king of pole pole. Like, take it slow. And
Yeah.
that's how I'm going to get to the top. It's not a rush. We all finished. We all got there. We didn't get there the exact same time, but we all summited it. And so for me, that's, I think, the key
Yeah.
is like, ooh, we don't have to do things as quickly or fast as everybody else, but
Uh-huh.
as long as
We'll
you
get,
go. And then, there's a little bit of excitement getting off the mountain. My sister-in-law had a little bit of mountain sickness, so we actually took a helicopter off of the mountain. The
yeah,
beauty of that is no one ever asks you if you how you got down. They only want to know if you got to the
that's
top.
it. That's it.
And that's like life, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, did you make it to the top?" Yeah, well, how did you get down? Nobody asked that question.
No one. Yeah, no one does. It's interesting. I remember a good friend, one of my best friends from my 20s was dating somebody that got caught in an avalanche in a mountain at one point, and it was on CNN and all of this, and she came out. They finally got rescued, and they were like, what are you going to do? Now that you're out, what's the first thing you're going to do?" She was like, "I'm going to get a Diet Coke." And the next day, Diet Coke delivered a pallet to her house of Diet Coke. It was a great story. But it's like those things are wild, man, because I remember climbing in Manitou Springs, right outside of Colorado Springs. I went up to there was a Manitou incline, and I went up with my stepdaughter, and she still talks about it, and I still think about it. And you think the whole time, you're like, while your body is just going through, because I was a distance runner in high school, but it's still different when you're doing that because you can't stop and pull over. You're just on a different terrain.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's the getting acclimatized, acclimated to the elevation as
Oh,
well, right?
totally.
And that's part of it. When I realized too, I just recently, this weekend, came back from my wife and I were on vacation in Honduras. We were scuba diving, and I had like basically a bad dive and ended up needing medical care for the bad dive.
Yeah,
Issues, lightheadedness, heavy legs, not good scenario.
yeah,
And what I realized is like some people are built for some things and some people are built for others. My wife, phenomenal scuba diver.
yeah,
Me, probably not going to scuba dive again.
yeah.
It's not going to keep me from doing things either. Like
Right.
it's not going to like keep me from doing things that feel uncomfortable. But I realize my body's built for climbing mountains. Hers is built for going under the sea. So the mermaid and the mountain man together, we make a pretty good combination.
That's
Yeah.
it. The yin and yang. I dig it. So, of everything that you've done and evolved to at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Oh, proudest my kids. I
Yeah.
think lots of people say that, but yeah, the kids, how they've become just good humans. I think that was what my wife and I set out on was making sure that they were good quality people, and they both are. They're phenomenal, phenomenal kids. So,
So, at the end of the day, Jay, everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think if you're looking for qualities, I think for me, I'm kind, I'm honest, I'm loyal, super observant, relatively quiet, and a good listener.
So you obviously have an adventurous spirit. So I want to ask you this. If you could climb into a time machine, the magic DeLorean, and go anywhere in the history of time and see one event with your own eyes, and you wouldn't create a ripple in time, you would just get to observe it. You'd get to be a fly on the wall. What would you love to have seen happen before your eyes?
One event, Joe, that's a really good question. Usually
This,
I have things right off the top of my head. One event in history in person.
this is like the intro sequence of Big Bang Theory. It's just like everything's flying at
It
you.
is. I think, you know what? I think I'd want to go see the Berlin Wall coming down.
Yeah,
Like I was in college at that time. I was a senior in college when it came down, and we saw it on TV. But to be there in person and just kind of like maybe even outside of it from a 30,000 foot view and just see the magnitude of what that meant in the world might be the answer.
that's awesome. I love that. Sometimes I don't. I think about certain moments in history, and we've been talking about sports. There was a clip, one of my favorite sports clips of all time, when the Royals made their run in 14-15. I think it was in 15 when they were getting ready to go to the World Series. The last out, our third baseman was Mike Moustakas, so everybody would say Moose.
Yep.
So someone filmed the outside of the stadium while that last out was being, and it was like you could hear the crack of the bat. It got so quiet, and then all of a sudden everyone went up, and then it was Moose, and then everything exploded. Fireworks went off, and I was just like, that would be so cool to
Be
watch
able
that.
to see that. To be able to see that. And oddly enough, my sister-in-law had Mets tickets at the time, so I went to games 3 and 4 of that series in New York.
Wow.
Yeah, and so the first one you probably remember the Mets won,
Yeah.
right, that series, and like riding the 7 train back into Manhattan was just like the energy was so crazy. And
Yeah.
then game 4, they were winning, and then ultimately, ended up losing. I think they were winning until like the 7th or 8th inning, and
Uh-huh.
then the Royals came back to take the game. It was like a death knell, like so quiet. The stadium
Oh,
was quiet. The train was quiet. Manhattan, everybody was just like, what just happened?
yeah.
And then you guys ultimately won. And then to make matters worse for me, fantasy baseball trip the next year that everybody decided to go to Kansas City. I was like, well, I just watched my sister-in-law's team lose, and now you're putting me in Kansas City watching them getting their rings. Thanks.
I know. That was weird. I remember that year. I was like, wow, how did that happen? Because we don't seem like an organization that wants to rub it in your face, but because it wasn't there was no real acrimony. It was just a
Oh
couple
no,
of
not
good
at all. It was
teams.
just a great. It was really great series.
Yeah, it really was. And that team was just unconscious. After they lost that game 7 and 14,
Mhm.
they just weren't going to stop, and that season just steamrolled through
Everything, yeah.
and got there. Yeah. So if anyone wants to hire you, anybody wants to reach out, anybody has any questions, where do they go?
You just search the Empty Nest Coach or thisemptynestlife.com. They can find me, Jay Ramsden. You can search Jay Ramsden. I come up on Google nonstop.
I love it.
So,
I will put links in the show notes. Jay, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your
so,
story.
so,
Thank you for your
so
time.
good. Yeah, great conversation. Loved everything we covered.
Absolutely. Thank you.